Morning, Sam. How are you?
Morning, Rob. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the podcast today.
Have you been on very many podcasts in your career?
I have never been on a podcast. This is my first one.
I was looking through your accomplishments and results from your athlete resume, and one I didn't see here was beating Rob in a bench press 1RM ever. I just
Well,
want to
Rob,
verify that you never beat me, doing heavy bench presses all the years you trained with me.
all those years, I never was able to beat Rob, but I think that if we went head to head today, I think I could beat him and finally have an uphill athlete out bench press Rob.
Now, what do you think would cause me to go head to head with you today when I already have you and I can just rub this in forever?
Because pride does not disappear with age. That I know.
How old were you in your first comp? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was 14 years old in my first competition.
And then when you won that event in Snowbird, that was like the juniors. Junior.
Yeah, I was the junior world free ski championship in Snowbird, Utah, and I was 17 years old.
17.
Yes.
And how has I know you've been retired for 2-3 years, right?
Correct. About 3 years now. Yeah.
You still connected to that community, or you like moved on totally?
I am still connected to that community. I have moved on in terms of my personal athletic career, where I do the same exact athletic day-to-day things as in training, as in skiing. It's just on my own terms, and I'm not really part of the community, but I still do everything just the same.
You Was there a significant change? I mean, did you like that world more when you got into it, or more when you left it?
I think I liked it more when I got into it in terms of the community and the world and the environment, working with brands, filming with videographers and shooting with photographers. I definitely liked it more when I was in it. And now that I'm out of it, I very much enjoy my time in the mountains alone and outside of it. But the core activities that I'm doing, I still love just as much now. But the environment, I definitely loved it more when I got into it and had it on a pedestal, I believe, growing up, where it just seemed to be this amazing, magical world. And then when I was in it, I really enjoyed it. And as the years went on, I just kind of lost passion for the community and the environment of it, and really just enjoyed the core activities of skiing and the other athletic endeavors I was doing.
I distinctly remember a conversation with you after you've been training in the gym a couple years, where you came in, you said, "I'm not going to compete anymore. I'm just going to start doing my own deal and making my own brand with my own videos." And I can't really tell from afar. I'm interested. It's interesting. This thing is it Sean Wright or no Sean Rice or Travis Rice is doing with the natural competition thing, right? Where he's kind of got artificial features and natural environment, just kind of like they were doing at Jackson. I remember. I forget what those were called. The
Yep, the natural
red zone,
selection.
natural selection. And there's some money, a little bit of money behind it. But miners, I mean, I follow a little bit of the free ski tour, world free ski tour news and stuff. But it quickly seemed that the path to sponsorships, at least, and you saw that and moved on, it was not competing, but is that still the way it is?
Yeah, it's even more so now. So I started out, what really kick started my career was winning that world championship when I was 17, and I was able to get a couple sponsors on board. But as you went up the progression through this competition world, you would really see these people win the world championships at the adult level and not really progress in their career at all. It was a big achievement to win still, but you weren't able to achieve the status of folks that maybe were filming in these TGR videos or that were out shooting their own projects. That really seemed that that was a much better path at the time, and it was a big influence in me deciding, hey, I don't want to compete anymore. And a lot of these folks like Travis Rice, I believe, that are doing these natural selection competitions really took out competitions in the spirit of more so the mountains are not this rigid idea. You can't just go out and make it like a football game where you have step A, B, and C, and that's how you succeed. It's so much more subjective. And so they were able to carve out these careers where they were shooting these video parts, and so they were able to gain respect in creating a little bit more from nothing without the rigidity of this is exactly how you succeed. And then I think later on in their careers, we're able to build a competition around that, in the vein of those natural selections. And then you've also seen in like King and Queens of Corbett's, those competitions are a better platform, in my opinion, to progress to be a sponsored professional skier and have a successful career.
So when you say see their careers grow, what does that mean? Be a sponsored skier?
Yeah, so to get into the details, be a sponsored skier, you have brands that are paying you to ski for them, paying you to ride on their gear, paying for you to film in movie segments. They're paying for you to go on expeditions. That's generally where a lot of folks want to go with a ski career, not to speak for every single professional out there, but for the most part, that was where myself and majority of my colleagues wanted to go.
Well, the problem with self-producing film is you get to edit it. You don't get to edit a comp.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's that guy, Sage, who skis for TGR?
Yeah, Sage Catabriga Losa was one
Right.
of the.
He's got to be like 50 years old now, or going on 50.
Well,
I mean, has he ever competed, ever done well to comp?
yeah, I think so. I don't think though that he did. He wasn't a competition winner, and this is a huge dynamic you're seeing right now. Some of the best skiers in the world are 18 to 23-year-olds in the competition Freeride World Tour, and they are, in terms of pure skiing, they're the best skiers in the world. And you see that in how they compete and they win these events. What they're doing at these events is unbelievable, but they're not necessarily the people that are getting these contracts to make this a 20, 30-year long career that you might see somebody like Sage Catabrigo Losa in his 40s or 50s still doing and shooting segments with TGR and having maybe a contract with the North Face that allows you to be able to do this without having another job. So it's an interesting dynamic.
I mean, why in the world is TGR going out there with these athletes who've been with him for 30 years?
It's a great question.
I mean, is Sage an entertainer or is he an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, Sage probably at his core for 20 years was an athlete and then transitioned to an entertainer.
I mean, I don't mean to pick on him. I'm just talking in
No.
general.
And I think that's probably right. And a lot of what has happened between the ski industry between when Sage Catabriga was maybe 20, 30, and a lot of his colleagues at that age, they were athletes, like very pure athletes. And that was the core of the industry and why I got in, because I wanted to be really blunt, jump off 50-foot cliffs and do backflips. And it was athletic endeavors that really appealed to me. And now the world has changed a lot where entertainers generally get a little bit more progress in the ski world, whereas you see these 18 to 23-year-olds in the Freeride World Tour that are purely athletes and they're phenomenal at it. They're not getting as much progress.
Well,
A couple kids
still
my
on
age
the
won and were not able to make a career out of it. They won the adult Freeride World Tour.
they weren't able to.
Nope.
If I understand correctly, I don't watch ski porn all the time. I rarely watch ski porn. But I do watch. I've seen the progression of honestly the tricks and the speed at those free ride events.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and these guys are up there. They don't get to like ski this ahead of time, right? They gotta go
No.
when they gotta go. It's friggin' intense and on the line
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's just amazing to see the progression of the sport. Primarily from the tricks that they're doing, skiing as fast as they are. But if that's not, getting sponsor respect, and the sponsors, they just need to sell gear. Can you do a ski film today? Like I haven't seen the latest TGR or those films. I mean, how much is skiing and how much is, background goofy stuff? Making, your breakfast burrito, the obligatory breakfast burrito or, peeing outside the truck or something.
Yeah. And to be fully honest, I haven't watched a TGR film in 10 years because of that. But I feel like a lot of it takes away from the athletics of the sport and the true people that are still on top of the sport in the ski world put out their own segments, like a 10 to 20 minute long YouTube video that just focuses on that. And you can look at, who I think are some of the best skiers right now in the world. Sammy Carlson and Candy Dovex and Carl Fosvet. They're all gentlemen that decided, hey, that that's not working, that model anymore. I'm just going to go put out my own film and show my athletics and the true, passion for the sport without necessarily what we call in the industry B-roll. And they're at the top of the game, and it works really well. But it's completely separated from those companies.
So if you're, I mean, are these guys making money because they're getting so many views on YouTube and there's advertising there? Are they getting like, because I was reading recently where there's quite a few tradesmen, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, who are
Mm-hmm.
making good money just shooting stuff they do at work. I mean, as much as they're making doing the trades, if not more, because of the YouTube views. I'm not too sure how they monetize that. Is that the same thing happening in skiing, or are they still depending on sponsorships from industry?
They're still depending on sponsorships from the industry, but I think you're hitting the nail on the head there, that they're monetizing off of views. If you get 300,000 views, you're able to monetize in a few different ways. But I do believe that it comes back to the company as well. And I think the folks that are doing it right and well are the ones that are showing the high level athletics, and you have 300,000 people watch it. Obviously it sells gear, but I think it really attaches that person to the gear, and people want to buy that gear to be more like that person. And I feel like that value equation really lines up in, why it makes sense for a brand to sponsor a skier. It doesn't so much make sense for somebody that just has views for the sake of having views, which is the other side of where the sport has headed, for these brands to then pay that person, and then what's getting pushed out is maybe ski content that is the B-roll, that getting views for the sake of views.
Okay, let's say you are advising your 17-year-old self. You just got a little bit of, stuff, and you say, okay, here's how we're going to do it now, because made mistakes along the way or whatever. What would you do now? If you had a son who was, just wanted, how would you dictate his career?
If I would go back to myself, if I had to redo it myself, I would focus in very narrow, and I would focus in very narrow and say, I'm going to go after a ski sponsor. I'm going to go after an outerwear sponsor, and that's pretty much it. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to focus very narrowly on my field, be it at the time when I was starting, I had a lot of success and really enjoyed jumping off of 100-foot plus cliffs. And so I would go very narrow into that field, and then go and really go after that. And I would probably hit social media harder, to be fully honest, although I have an interesting relationship with it. I don't want to push out what I was doing just to push it out, but I would work harder to tell more people about what I was doing. But I would just focus on the things that really mattered to the sport I cared about, which, in that case at the time was jumping off these very big cliffs and skiing these very exposed lines. And I would just focus on that, and I would tell more people just about that. That's what I would have done looking back at it now. And if I do that over the course of 10 years, I probably would have had a lot more success than I did have.
When you say the best skiers today, and you mentioned a few names, what makes them the best skier?
For me, it's about athletic ability and then the mix of creativity.
What does that mean? Athletic ability. I mean, what
But
is that? Bench press, speed? What is it? Tell me what it means.
in my mind, athletic ability for these best skiers in the world, it's how fast they're skiing, how big of error they're getting, the difficulty of the trick that they're doing. So, and then the fluidity that they're doing it in. And this is probably pretty similar to how they judge freestyle
Yeah, it sounds like
competitions.
right. Yeah.
Yep. But that's generally what I'm looking for. And then I have the other aspect of it that's really important, which is creativity. Because once you're 10, 20 years into this, it's progressed. The sport is progressing a lot, but you see a lot of the same stuff. And you use the term ski porn, right? Because it's all the same. And so the best guys in the world are mixing this really high-end athletic ability at the top of their sport with creativity to do something fresh, do something that other folks are not doing, whether it's in a mountaineer sense where they're skiing something that somebody hasn't skied, or from a freestyle sense where they are doing tricks off something that nobody else has, or doing it in a certain way that nobody else has.
So give me a
That's how I see it.
specific example from one of those guys you mentioned. Something
Mm-hmm.
specifically that one of those guys did that you're like, whoa. Can you remember back?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Candide Vex, I don't know if you've seen any of his videos, but he's probably in his 40s now and is still, in my opinion, the best skier in the world. But he will ski down these big French Alps resorts, and this one shot in particular, he'll be going 100 miles an hour over these moguls. So it's not necessarily even in this fresh powder field in Alaska. And he'll be jumping over the mogul field, and he'll go off a little man-made jump and do it's probably like a 100-foot double backflip on hard pack over a church and land it. And you see a video like that just shows pure mastery of the sport, not dealing with all of the aspects around him where they have to be perfect, like the fresh powder field in Alaska. It's just somebody that's showing true mastery over the sport, and then also throwing in some uniqueness like jumping over a church. That might be a good example.
I saw, we do a ret every week, and there was one feed. It's like a amalgamator or whatever, and they had this like new style of urban skiing. These guys were like doing in cities, and kind of like shoveling snow out, and people were watching. I was like just waiting for bones to get broken because they're not wearing helmets, and they're like jumping over steps and stuff. So I guess that's kind of what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful part of the sport, in my opinion. That's a very strong aspect of the sport.
Really? I mean, you're like from the mountains. You don't think that's like skateboarding in the winter?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I mean the real problem is that sometimes there's a lack of soul in the sport, and when you see people out there,
what do you mean lack of soul? How would you see it?
I'm going to tell you exactly.
Okay, I want to see it.
I'm going to tell you exactly. Let's start with the people out in the streets. They are out there all night shoveling these jumps to do one perfect hit. And so they shovel these jumps on these streets and these unique features. And they are just putting love and passion and all of their time into this. And they'll go off and hit this feature all night. They might hit it 50 times and they'll hit one shot. That's passion and soul. Like they're doing that because they love that's persistence and all of these beautiful things. So I love what they do, even though that's not part of my sport and not what I do, but I think it's a beautiful aspect of the sport. Whereas you can see, especially in a place like Jackson that embodied free skiing for so long, people just want to be a part of it and talk about all of these things that don't necessarily matter to the sport. I'm not particularly here to say there's one way to do things, but when you're talking about all this superfluous stuff with the skiing, like making the breakfast burrito, I think you had a great example. That's not talking about the soul, and you can tell when people are doing this because they truly love the activity versus they're maybe trying to get fame or stature or get views. So that's what I mean.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit. I've watched these views of these guys who do like hitting a golf ball and hitting an apple off a stand 50 yards away. And if they do it once, they get, 1 million Instagram views. But then they do back the scene and they show them doing it again. What is different? I mean, what's the passion there? It seems like they're just trying to get views by doing this weird trick. And the creativity is coming up with this trick that they think people, what's the difference between that and the ski example you just gave me?
Well, I would say that's if you care enough about the process, to me, it's about the process. If you start loving what you're doing, the day to day of it, and you can just tell that, I'm going through this every single day. Maybe it's hitting a apple with a golf club, and that's clearly what you love. That can have soul.
The ball,
with a golf ball.
The apples, they gotta hit the. You see what I'm saying, right? You've seen these things before.
No, right. I understand that. Maybe they're going for views, but they probably do well because they have enough love to put the process into it that the result ends up great. I think it's when you're chasing the result, which is the views, and that's how you're making your career. That's when you're really lacking the soul. I don't particularly care what the process is, but as long as you love it and you continue to do it, that to me, has soul. So that's how I would define it and see it as.
Well, in the alpine climbing world, there is an ethic to it. The idea of clean climbing, to removing all your stuff. It's pretty much a faux pas if you put a bunch of fixed gear or pitons up and you don't clean them on the way out. Even doesn't matter how hard it was going up. There's nothing like that exists in your sport or in free skiing? That idea?
There is.
Well, what is it then?
Well, I mean that idea absolutely exists. There's absolutely an elitist feel, and I grew up in it and definitely feel it, and I feel judgmental to people sometimes when I see them maybe not skiing things in the way that culturally we deem appropriate. So maybe that they're doing more of this B-roll. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of judgment passed down on those people that are maybe doing things like shooting that B-roll, because the elitism and the alpinism view and the free ski view is very similar. Like, there's a right way to do things. There's a style to it. And if you're not hitting that style, you're getting judgment from your peers. So there's definitely a lot of that in free skiing, whether that's right or wrong.
Are you still getting free skis from K2?
No.
They were your first ski sponsor, right?
Yep. They were my first ski sponsor, and I worked for them for 10 years.
Tell me about the details of that relationship. I mean, what did they give you? What do you have to give them back? What pressure did they have a, yearly evaluation? Did you have somebody who managed you? Did they ever send you any money to go on a trip or just send you money? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I started out with them right after I won that world championship, and they gave me 2 pairs of free skis.
Well, how did you start out with them? They reach out to you, or what happened?
No, so actually from you helped connect me with Pip Hunt and Jess Baker, I believe. And both of them reached out to separate companies, one to K2, one to Solomon. And I had won the Junior World Championship in 2013 around April. Started to tell people that I had won, I think, in that summer. And then in August, on the same day, Solomon reached out to me and offered me a sponsorship contract, and K2 called me and offered me a sponsorship contract. I ended up going with K2 then, and so the connection had been made through other professional athletes.
I mean, what were the details of that contract? Can you remember? Like the business details of it. Go ahead.
The business details of that were basically an obligation to post a certain amount, go to a certain amount of competitions. I can't remember the dirty details of exactly how many competitions to go to, how much social media I needed to post. And then in exchange, I was able to get free gear. There was no money on the first contract.
But they did have a competition requirement, which is probably not this true today.
Yeah, I very much doubt it today.
Did your relationship with them over the time with them change, or did you see a change to the contract, what they expected every year, what they wanted?
Yeah, so there was a lot of change, and a lot of the trouble in the industry is the lack of stability. So we would go through a different team manager almost every year or two. And this team manager is a marketing person hired by the company that oversees a team of anywhere from, call it, 10 to 50 individuals, all being paid either in gear or in money. And so there was huge changes in requirements. As I progressed through my career, the contracts turned into trips that were fully paid for, that I got to go on, to actual money that they gave me. And it would vary between you have an obligation to post this much to not even having an obligation at all. Just saying, here's the money, go out and shoot some parts, have fun. So it was exceptionally up and down and different every year, and it depended on who came in and took over the show. And it was generally somebody that was 25 to 30 years old, and it was almost a new person every year.
Did they know anything about skiing?
Yeah, so the best ones did, but even the first one, his name was Zach. He had hired me on. He was a fresh out of college, East Coast guy who knew something about skiing, but not really. And he got brought on, hired by K2, and they had him fire and let go of Seth Morrison, who was at the time the best professional free skier in the world. And this guy must have been a 23, 24-year-old kid that had to drop this 38-year-old man that had been doing this for 20 years and probably had a hefty contract with them. So no, not all of them knew much about skiing, but the ones that did were the best. But it's a tough job, and a lot of them got burnt out throughout a year or two.
Did you have any fellow sponsored athletes in it a little bit longer than you really mentor you as you went through it, or were you kind of on your own?
For the most part, I was on my own. Through training with you at the gym, I was able to get connected with people like Griffin Post. Griffin definitely provided a lot of insight for me. But that being said, I definitely wasn't tight with anybody enough in a mentor relationship. And what I think is so unique about this free ski world and building a career out of it, it's not like football or the tactical world where there is a set path going out and making a career and when you are successful. And I think that's exemplified by people winning the Freeride World Tour and not being able to make a career out of it, right? That should be you win this, you should have no problem then going out and making this a career, but that's just not the case. And so it's just a much more entrepreneurial case by case basis on how do you make this work for you in your life to maybe go out and do it for 20 years. So no, I didn't really have any mentorship on a like day by day or week by week basis that I was very close with.
Did you ever have a boot sponsor or goggles or
Yeah, yep.
you
So
know the guys?
K2 started making boots, I think the second year I was skiing with them, maybe about 2014. And then goggle I skied for Dragon Alliance, which is a ski snowboard
And
surf
when did
company.
you? Are you still an ambassador with Steel?
Yes. So Theo was a very unique situation where obviously I specifically retired. I skied the Grand Teton butt naked, and I said, "This is it. I'm done." And so that was my retirement post, and I retired from doing the sponsorship in the traditional way, where they would send me gear, I would post all winter about them, yada yada. I retired from that, and a couple of sponsors took that really well, and Stio being one of them, where they said, okay, we still see that you're out there training in our gear, you're out there still, I'm still jumping off the cliffs in the gear, even though I'm not posting every day. I'm doing the mountaineering lines in the gear, I'm running the ultras in their gear. And they basically said, hey, we'll keep sending you gear and support you on any expedition or event that you may need in exchange for basically wearing the gear and repping it how we want it to rep.
Do you? And so, do they like give you a credit at their online store and you get to order the gear you want? Is that the way it works?
For 2 years, yes, they used to give me a credit on the online store. Every fall, they would have a big budget, and then every spring, they'd have a smaller budget. Now, I have so much gear that it's going to last me for the next 5 years. And so I don't need to just get gear to have gear. So they just said, if you need anything, let us know. And I really feel very happy about that relationship. That's something that I know Patagonia works with a lot of their athletes like that, where you're doing things a little bit more intentional rather than just getting gear to get gear and posting to post. And I am very happy about having that relationship still.
So, when you were in it sponsored, I mean, did you look at other sponsored athletes as colleagues or competitors? Because there's only so many sponsorships out there. I mean, when you saw somebody post something up, you're like, "Oh yeah," or "Yeah, fucker."
Yeah, I would say I definitely would be jealous because I would see some people put something up and I would definitely get jealous and wish, hey, I should go out and do that, or maybe I should have that sponsorship. So there definitely was a lot of jealousy brewing earlier, but I think as I got, again, going back to what advice would I give to myself if I was 17 again, I would say get narrow and do that narrow thing very well, and you just have so much less of that jealousy because there's less people in, free skiing is a narrow field, but you can get narrow in it. You could be a mountaineer free skier, you can be great at jumping off 100-foot cliffs. There was only a couple of us that happened to do that, and I would just focus on that, and I'd probably have a little less of that jealousy. But for the most part, it was colleagues. I met a lot of great people that are great ski partners still today.
Did that pressure push you to improve your skiing or gimmick your videos?
Gimmick my videos, and in particular, I have a lot of fire in me. I just want to go do things. I'm fired up to do things. And early in my career, I was hitting things very hard in terms of going out and skiing new lines, jumping off of new cliffs. And I definitely ended up at a place maybe 3 or 4 years in where I was just putting this emphasis on gimmicking videos and posting things that really
Give me
didn't
an
matter.
example of a video that you gimmicked. One thing you're like, oh, I got to do this because someone else is doing it or it's expected. Or go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So to be super specific, like spending a lot of time to get a shot of me driving away in a car, or I did a video series called One Fun Thing a Day where I would go out and do one specific thing a day just to post. And it would just be like me snowmobiling around in a field, which, yeah, it's fun, but it just felt gimmicky. Or even looking to get really specific, looking at like a sunscreen brand as a sponsor. There's nothing wrong with having a sunscreen brand as a sponsor, but it's so far away from the core activity of what I'm doing, and shooting maybe these like lifestyle shots of me putting sunscreen on. So those are all three examples of things where I would never go out and do that again. It just had nothing to do, or it had very little to do with what I was really doing and focused on.
Yeah, I remember talking to one of the athletes about you got to somehow separate yourself, and for a lot of people, the skiing all looks the same. You can't tell the difference, whether it be a look or whatever. It seems like some athletes definitely do that.
Yeah. And
Just a look or the way they talk. Go ahead.
I mean, that's what's so difficult about it. You're getting paid a living to go ski. It's very difficult, and it should be difficult. And so, getting back to being narrow, you need to be the top of your field at something. And look at Sammy Carlson in particular, who was a X Games champion, professional park skier for a long time, and he really moved into the backcountry to be the best backcountry free skier in the world. It's very specific. He lives in British Columbia. You know, he's not necessarily the ones jumping off the 60-foot cliffs, but what he is doing is he's doing 720s off of natural features. It's a really narrow thing, and that's what separates people. Is you're getting narrow and you're becoming a master at it, and that's what sticks out in these videos from these guys that they do one video a year. They get 300,000-400,000 views. They have very big contracts with these very big companies. They don't have to post every day. They don't need to put out a video every day and make something to make something. They're a master at their craft, and it's shown in the respect by people watch it because it's exceptionally unique, but it probably took them a long time to get there.
Why did you retire? I mean, you could be still doing it till you're 50. You know, Griffin's mid-40s, right?
Yeah, correct. I retired because I had the fire and it transitioned to something else, into entrepreneurship. I felt like what I was doing was getting old. It was just the same exact thing. I really hitting on the mastery part. There are parts of skiing that I want to work to master, but I did not want to work to master videoing it and pushing it out there. And I just felt like I was doing the same thing year after year after year, that I wasn't getting enough progression in my life. Which, you know, that's part of becoming a master at something. Maybe you have to do it for 10 years, right, to be a master at it. And that I transitioned into entrepreneurship and, you know, felt like I was able to have more personal growth there. And it actually allowed me to get better at honing my ski craft. And I actually ended up going a route where ski mountaineering became more of my focus, and that's been more of the craft that I've been honing. And I don't have all of these unnecessary things like sponsors and having to post be in my way to help hone and master that craft. But I really did it out of a transition where I just felt like I was doing the same exact thing year after year, and I just the fire wasn't as strong because of that.
Who's the best free skier ever? The best male free skier? I mean, ever. Let's say who's ever, and then today. Could be the same person.
It's Candy Dovex.
The guy you're telling me about.
Yep. You should go watch. It's a different. You watch ski porn and then you watch what he puts out. It's a different beast. It's just skiing. It's total mastery. He's probably in his 40s now, and he's a total master at it. But early in his career, he won the Freeride World Tour like it was nothing. He was competing in the park competitions, shot with TGR, and now he puts out these videos of just him skiing throughout France and Europe. And again, there's no frills. He gets one guy to follow him with a GoPro, and it is the most master high level skiing you will ever see.
Who's the best skier that you ever personally skied with?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, like Pep Fugis. So Pep became a friend over the years. He was a K2 skier. He really made a name for himself in the creativity aspect of skiing. And he also went to help shape a lot of the products that they made. The way that he skis, the power and the speed with the style. He was one of the guys that was doing these 540s and landing switch, which is exceptionally difficult and bring creativity to the mountains. But he does that with such aggression. Skiing with him is pretty unbelievable. If you see him ski through trees, he skis faster than anybody I've ever seen, and it just shows like total mastery. Pep Fugis would be.
Best female skier, free skier.
Ooh, man, I have to say Crystal Wright, otherwise I'll get in trouble. See if she's listening to this. No, there's a woman named Hedvig Vessel on the Free Ski World Tour right now. I'd imagine she's in her 30s. I don't know exactly how old she is, but watching her go out and throw backflips in the middle of this steep terrain without having a manicure takeoff, and then watching her ski fast through these really exposed lines. She's one of the best skiers, I believe, today.
Really, men or women?
Men and women.
Do you know her background? Is she a race background, or do you know?
I don't know. I believe she's European. She might be Swiss. I don't know her background, but she may be a race background.
What would you have liked to achieve in your career that you didn't?
I would have liked to have spent time filming with TGR. That was something I was never
Why didn't
able to
those
pull
guys,
off.
bring you on? I mean, it seems like it's just. Go ahead.
Yeah, I tried for years. I bugged them and bugged them, and we got to a point where we were in dialogue, and they basically wanted K2 to skis to pay money to have me come and shoot over. And at the time, the business model for TGR is they made money by having these big companies, be it the North Face or K2, pay money for their athletes to be in the films, and then athletes would sell product. And that model had started to fade away once I really got in the industry. And K2 was like, we're not going to really go out and pay for this and pay for these trips. We're just not getting the return. And so I wasn't a North Face sponsored athlete. And so North Face was their main sponsor. And it was really tough for me to break on. I was able to shoot a couple days with them, just doing small side projects. Griffin brought me on for a day, but I wasn't really able to break into that. And that's something I really wish I had. And it would have been nice to have been a couple years earlier when the industry, it felt like those movies were really well done. That's something I regret and wish that I had gotten to. And I chased after the North Sea sponsorship for a long time to achieve that goal and was just never able to hit it.
Has drones has certainly made it cheaper to do some of that stuff. I imagine, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can go out with
A drone
one,
pilot.
2 people crew, and you can shoot this amazing feature length film basically with a tenth of the budget. Why would you not do that if you were K2? And that's exactly the direction that they headed. Like, let's spend 10,000 on our own feature film versus, and these numbers aren't exact, but versus paying them 10,000 to have an athlete appear 2 or 3 times for maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Did they ever ask for your input in terms of ski design or
Yeah.
technical stuff?
Yes, the back half of my career, I definitely got a lot more involved with that. I got to go to New Zealand with K2 and help test out some skis, in particular, this one set of skis as I got into more of this mountaineering role. I think in the back half of my ski career, they helped me come on or they brought me on to help test out a lot of the prototypes for the skis, put input into that. They would send me the prototypes. I would break them, tell them what was wrong. And that really was a nice little niche that I faded into in the last 5 years of my career that didn't force me to post as much. And it felt like I was being much more useful and purposeful because I care a lot about the gear and the ski that I had helped design with K2. It was specifically a lightweight ski that could ski big mountains. So you could bring it up hiking, but still ski down with it and still have that performance.
Sure. I watched it super close, but it seems the parabolic ski thing and then the wide skis, getting wider and wider and wider. It doesn't seem like there's been a whole lot of friggin' technological evolution recently, right? It's
No,
just really
no.
incremental.
Very incremental. So just to loop back to your early question, do I still ski on K2 skis? I have one ski from pretty much every brand now, and I'm very happy about it because getting back to being narrow, I have a ski for each purpose and I'm very specific about it. So I have a K2 ski that is K2 is well known for making these damp wooden skis that they ski over bumps really well. It's a great resort ski. And so that's what I ski in the resort is this 110, 112, 100 foot twin tip ski that can ski down really fast. I use it in the Kings and Queens of Corbett's. It's a beefy ski, but it's still playful. But then I have a forefront ski that is made by it's designed by Eric Holierson. Hoji. I can't say his last name appropriately. But he's a gear nerd on how do I make a light ski that goes up well but skis down even better. So I'm getting really narrow and I have a different brand of ski for a different type of skiing.
Is there one overall ski manufacturer now that is head and shoulders above the others, or they're all pretty close in individual skis?
Yeah, they're all very generic. I think though, for if you're a specialist, you're going to go after the brands like Forefront, who Eric Hoji makes the skis himself. It's the best ski, but it's incrementally the best ski. I don't particularly feel like it's head and shoulders above, but when I'm getting really specific, and I'm also skiing things where if you fall, you die. So it does matter to be incrementally better. That there are brands like Armada and Forefront where they have these athlete designed skis, and K2 does it now with Carl Fosfet, where that's the ski. Those are the skis that I'm skiing. The athlete driven, tested, very purpose intentional ski. Those are the ones that I now pay money for and ski and use for specific purposes.
Any improvement in terms of resort bindings, backcountry bindings, or boots? I saw boas come around for boots, but if so, what are they? And
Yeah,
what's been
so the skis themselves, they're no head and shoulders improvement, no big leaps, but the bindings in particular have made very big leaps. So especially when you're talking touring bindings, there's this company called ATK. All they do is make ski bindings. I believe they helped make car manufacturer parts, and they were actually skiers and decided to start making ski bindings. But they're the most popular touring binding on the market. They have their ATK Raider series. It's a 15 din pin binding. It weighs about 380 grams, which is
so 15
exceptionally
din
light.
means you can turn it up so it's not going to pop out. Your
Yeah,
leg's
you
going
can
to break
ski
before it
fast.
pops, right?
Yep, correct. And for people like me, I'm skiing in places where if you fall, you might die. So I'd prefer to have my leg break than maybe to have the binding pop out and die. And so you're getting really narrowed down from how do I get as lightweight as possible, yet have it as strong as possible. And these bindings, these ATK Raiders, come in at about 380 grams, whereas the mega light bindings come in are about 250 grams. So you're only 100 grams heavier, but the performance of the ski, of how they ski, is exceptionally higher. And so there's been big leaps and bounds in that.
I mean, Dynafit had that market for a long time. They're being eclipsed by this new company. Wow, pretty quick.
Oh, very much so. They've been very much eclipsed. And Marker, who has forever made these alpine bindings, has really done a great job in the touring market. They came out with this Marker Kingpin years ago. It's with a pin toe piece and a alpine heel. And so it's still heavier than those ATK bindings, but I would ski that binding any day, and I would do double backflips on that binding and not pop out. So it is very strong. And they actually ended up making these bindings that work for, they are full alpine bindings with the toe. And then the heel is also an alpine binding, and you can flip the toe up and it becomes a pin binding. They're heavier, but they perform really well. And there's really amazing performance improvements and
So
being able to
pins, so you
have
can
that
still free your heel and hike uphill with them or stand
and
uphill.
tour. Yep,
Got it.
exactly. Yep. So big improvements on that in the binding side.
Boots? Anything with boots?
Yeah, a lot with boots. So the BOA is brand new. I'm not totally convinced if it's gimmicky or it actually works well yet. Remains to be seen. A lot of the concern with the BOA is that if it breaks in the field, it's going to be difficult to fix. And if you're in a place where a lot of the things that I ski mountain traverses. What happens if I'm 20 miles back and my BOA boost breaks? It's a major issue. But at the same time, they've gone on this same journey of how do I make this boot as light as possible for the folks that want to move uphill easier. And it makes it, as you know, it makes it a lot easier to be light moving uphill, but still have it ski really well on the way down. And so they've made exceptional gains, and they've kind of come around this gram weightage of 1,300 to 1,500 grams in these ski boots that they ski. You can ski them in the resort still. They're not as powerful as a true alpine boot, but they move uphill so well, and they have this huge range of motion. And then some of them have that BOA, so you can evenly have the boot go around your foot, so you don't have these weird hot spots because the buckles are in these two places. It's evenly wrapped. So huge advancements.
What brand and model of boots are you skiing right now?
So I'm
For backup
skiing
for alpine skis, I guess for resort and then for your touring mountaineering.
Yep. So for the resort, I ski just a very standard K2 130 flex, big, heavy boot. There's no walk mode. It's meant to charge through choppy snow, go fast. Very simple. Those boots have been the same for a long time. But then the Mountaineer boot, I ski this more often. It's the Technica Zero G Pro Tour. It's a 4-buckle boot. Back in the day, Dynafit would make these boots where you'd have 2 or 3 buckles and you just wouldn't have the power. So it's the same traditional style boot that you would put in an alpine boot is this Technica Zero G Pro Tour, but it's 1,300 grams, exceptionally light on the way up, and skis well enough for me to go hike all the way up the Grand Teton really fast and still put in these big arcing S turns and not necessarily feel the boot give out in the middle of my ski turn, which is exceptionally important when you're skiing exposed areas.
Is I know that backcountry skiing was growing. Is it still growing or is it tapered off?
I believe it's still growing as it's just becoming more accessible with this gear. This gear makes it really easy to actually go out in the mountains. To get back on the boot conversation, Dynafit is making these boots that I'm very excited about. It has something called a Hoji lock to it. And so basically you can switch from ski mode to walk mode and you don't have to unbuckle a single buckle. And
Well,
so my
it's fast.
Technica Zero G Tour Pros, yep, I'm sitting there fiddling with buckles for 5-6 minutes, and I'm a pro. Like I ski 100+ days a year for 10 years. Like I'm good at getting my boots on and off. And so imagine somebody coming into the sport to be able to just flip the switch and you're walking, and flip the switch and you're skiing. And so these technology advancements being lighter, being easier, I think are continuing to help the sport grow. It's definitely growing. Ski areas are busier, backcountry is busier. I don't believe it's tapering off, but I don't have data.
You ever been avalanched?
No, never been in an avalanche.
You ever dug somebody out?
Never dug anybody out. I had to run up very fast to potentially dig somebody out. I was climbing up Garnet Canyon in April in Grand Teton National Park to go see a lion called the Dike Coular, and it sits right underneath the Grand Teton. And so the Grand Teton has a big face called the otter body face, and it's this hanging snowfield. And in the spring, that whole face will go, and you have to cross right underneath the face to be able to get over to this line. And there was a group of 2 or 3 ahead of me, maybe about 10-15 minutes, maybe 300-400 vertical feet up, and the whole thing slid. And I watched it, and I had to run up there to potentially, and with my beacon in my hand, fully huffing and puffing, breathing to see if I had to dig them out. But no, I've never had to. I felt very lucky.
Are you wearing name escapes me, but the inflatable backpack? Are you wearing one of those?
No, I do not wear one of those.
Why not?
One, if I'm skiing in a place like Grand Teton National Park, where I'm skiing a mountaineering line, the consequence of being caught in an avalanche is not, the concern is not burial. The concern is trauma from falling and dying. 9 out of 10 times. There may be a situation in which you're in Grand Teton National Park and you get buried and you die of stuff, die of being buried. But that's one reason. So when I'm skiing, and that's where I ski a lot in the backcountry there. So it's just heavier. It actually makes me slower. And then it also has this invincibility complex that concerns me. And this is a balancing thought here, but it concerns me to say, hey, I have this airbag that if I am in an avalanche, I will just end up on top. It definitely worries me psychologically to be thinking about that when I spend a lot of time in avalanche terrain. On the other end of that is I spend a lot of time in avalanche terrain. It's eventually things just happen. It would be beneficial, to have one at times, especially if, I'm skiing in the resort where, maybe if I'm avalanched, I'm not going to die by trauma. I would potentially die by being buried. But the invincibility complex is one that weighs heavier on me, and the weight is also really big for me. For most of the time, I want to be able to move fast to avoid putting myself in a bad situation.
Did you were you surprised when you started getting into the ski mountaineering how much you like going uphill?
Yeah, I am a very big uphill athlete that can probably out bench press Rob, so I'm a little unique in that regard. But it very much surprised me how much I really love the uphill.
Because you
It
grew up
turned into
as a resort kid, right? You were
yeah,
resorting all the time.
yeah. I don't believe I didn't start skinning with skis until I was 14 years old. So I didn't have much of a background in.
How old were you started skiing? 4 or 5? There, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, my whole history was focused on downhill, jumping off cliffs. That's what I love to do. Living in Jackson, there's definitely ample opportunity in the side country in Jackson Hole. You do a lot of little boot packs. So I was definitely introduced to that very young. And so doing these small boot packs. And then I started getting to Grand Teton National Park. I think the first time I had skied there, I was 15 years old. In the park, and it was really hard. I didn't like it. and it's pretty crazy to now I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I had in a year I probably climb about 600,000 vertical feet between running and skiing. It's probably about half and half, 300,000 skiing, 300,000 running.
Do you
So
still have your
definitely
do
switched.
you still have your sled? Or are you all skinning now? Sold your
Nope.
sled?
I sold my sled to put money into the business. I still snowmobile every once in a while. I have friends that have them, and I take them out, and it's fun. But I have gotten to this point in my fitness life where it's so easy for me to move fast uphill, and I'm just able to go at my own pace. I don't have to mess around with the snowmobile and have all these things go wrong. I can go by myself, and it's just so easy for me to go uphill and go and ski on track powder pretty much anywhere in any direction out of my house in Jackson.
Did you have a ski mountaineering mentor? Learned all the rope stuff and from, or you teach yourself?
Yep, taught myself this. I pretty much zero mentorship from the ski mountaineering. It was a lot through trial and error, which is a much more dangerous route, just considering that the consequence for mountaineering in a lot of these areas is if you fall, you'll probably die. That being said, I worked into it slowly, but didn't really get a mentor. Had friends that I was able to learn with. Some of those friends were ahead of me. Some had these rock climbing skills that I did not have that really helped me learn the skill set of building anchors and rope work and technique. But I learned a lot through YouTube, and people like Zahan have these amazing little clips. And I really just went and grabbed from all these different sources and then just put them into actual usage and was able to start building my skill set up that way.
I thought it was interesting. Just a little bit I did following them guys up, just learning on how to do the turn with your skins quickly going uphill.
Yeah,
Right, there's little tricks like that, and how to do the transitions quick. There's a lot to making it fast. A
yeah.
lot, not only fitness.
It's a very gear intensive sport. Like I've talked about fiddling with my boots, being able to move quick through transitions, being able to wipe the skins or the snow off the skins on your skis, to be able to do the turns correctly, to know when to switch from skiing to or boot packing to skinning. And that's why I think I've fallen a lot more in love with this mountaineering aspect of skiing, is that it's so dynamic. There's so much to it. There's so much to learn, and each day out in the mountains is different. And I have a lot of fire for going out and skiing these lines and building this skill set.
What percentage of your weekly trips ski mountaineering are alone?
80% alone.
It's hard to find people who can hang with you, and then they're working
Yep.
too.
Yep, exactly. And especially as you get into this upper area of endurance sports, where for me, I can go out on a Friday and I can go ski. I could go climb up the Grand Teton in just a couple hours. And so there are a couple people that can also do that, but it's tough to be able to coordinate schedules. And so I really enjoy also just being able to go out alone, and you just go. You don't have to wait for anything.
What is the biggest hole in your ski mountaineering game right now? Where are you the weakest?
Building anchors. So a good example of this is I went up to ski the northeast snowfields of Mount Owen, which is a very notorious specific ski line of, if you can ski this in the Tetons, you're kind of officially a ski mountaineer. And I went up to ski it, and I brought 2 rock climbers with me because I just did not feel appropriate enough about building an anchor should there be no anchor. And so a little bit of detail about the ski line is it's on Mount Owen, which is a tough mountain to climb and then ski down. And you ski down this 45-degree face with a 100-foot cliff below you. There's no way around the 100-foot cliff. So it's one of the most exposed lines that you can have. And there's an anchor there that is sometimes there, sometimes not. And so I can build an anchor, but I didn't feel confident enough to put my life on the line, sitting over a 100-foot cliff with a 45-degree slope above me, to go in and build an anchor myself and rappel off of it over this overhanging cliff. So I brought these 2 rock climber boys that are amazing at making anchors, and they went and did it and made sure that the anchor was 100% bomber. So that's a lot of where I'm focusing my knowledge is, how do I build these anchors? How do I really navigate through these situations where when it turns really ugly, I can build an anchor and put myself in a safe place.
So now, in terms of the winter, are you most excited about late April and May because of ski mountaineering and the spring skiing safety element, or not?
No, a lot of what I love to do is ski these really big mountaineer lines in February, March. One, because they don't get skied very often. It's much more difficult to go out and navigate the snowpack and navigate the terrain when it's not as filled in, but it also makes it more fun. So no, I'm not particularly as focused on the late side of the season. I usually put like an expedition on my radar to train for, but I really love hitting February and March to go up and ski the Grand Teton because there's not 100 people up there. right? It's more difficult. It's more challenging, but the skiing can also be better if you hit it right. The reward of doing it is higher.
Got it. Who's the best climbing partner or skiing partner you've ever had?
Ooh, that I've ever had. Well, Carson Meyer, who was a professional photographer and guy I grew up with my whole life. Him and I grew up through the ski industry together. He was a professional photographer. I was a skier. We worked together for years. He's a specific climber. He has been my best mountaineer partner because he really fills that gap in my knowledge. He can build anchors out of anything. He's actually about to go. He's in boot camp to be a firefighter in Seattle, but he's exceptionally knowledgeable about technical aspects of rope work, about EMS training, rope, about building anchors. And so him and I together were able to go out and get into these lines that we probably wouldn't be able to ski without each other. Whereas I'm able to bring in a lot of the fitness aspect and breaking the boot pack, doing a lot of the homework, pushing some of the harder skiing aspects of these lines first. And he's able to come in and bring in, I can build the anchor out. I can get us out of this situation that might get hairy at sometimes because you don't always know what these lines look like. You have the normal lines that are well documented, but the ones outside of that, you don't know what it's going to look like. And so you get a lot of spice in terms of, do I need a rope? Do I need a down climb? Do I need 2 ice axes? So he's been my best partner in being able to go into situations and step up a level, whether it's an expedition or a line. And I can feel confident that we're going to go out and safely execute it.
You ever get in a fight with a partner out there?
I've never gotten in a true fight, but I have definitely gotten into disagreements in particular about continuing to keep going. And I've definitely seen that more and more as I have taken such a hyper focus on endurance fitness that I'm able to move very fast and move without as much gear and water in particular. And I went to Denali in June and I was with 2 of my best partners, and both of them kind of needed to slow down and drink more water and acclimate slower. And we definitely had a little bit of, not necessarily disagreement, but starting to rub shoulders the wrong way of, how do we continue together as a team? And it actually ended up with me they had to go down and acclimate for longer and get healthy. And I had to go up to high camp alone for 5 or 6 days. But I've never really gotten in a place where we've had a blow up or not been able to make a decision. Usually I kind of sit on the conservative side of decision making, where if somebody doesn't feel comfortable, I ski 100+ days a year, every single year. I can go out and ski something the next day or the next year. So I don't particularly, I've never had a blow up on, we just need to go and finish this where somebody else does not want to. But I push my people hard, and and I have a lot of
So if I
friends to
ask
go
those
ski
guys
with.
who their worst partner would, they would say you, right?
Yeah, they'd probably say worst and best, a little mix of both.
Were you surprised that you liked ultras?
Yeah, that was a unique aspect that I didn't think I'd ever really like. I ran through Mountain Athlete. At times we'd run maybe at max 8 miles, I think once. And I just ended up really loving, again, the challenge. Back to ski mountaineering and why I've kind of moved away from the free skiing. I just didn't feel like I was being challenged anymore. Whereas in the mountaineering world and in the ultra world, it's so challenging to work for so long and get into these lines or these events and actually finish them. It's very difficult. And I think that's why I've really grown to love some of these endurance sports.
What is your training up for a 100-mile ultra? What's your weekly mileage? Do you remember?
Yeah, I can get into very specific details with you. I know through I actually use your 100-mile training plan, but I do tweak it because the vertical feet requirements of most of my 100 miles are exceptionally higher than doing a 15,000 vertical foot vertical elevation gain for 15,000 up, 15,000 down. A lot of 100 miles are about that. A lot of the ones that I do, for example, I have the Uray 100 coming up in July. It's 40,000. So it's almost 3 times as much vertical feet climbing. So I'll start out about 12 to 13 weeks out before the event, and I'll start about 35 miles, and then I'll ramp all the way up to about 80-mile weeks. And I don't necessarily go past that. I've really learned you're just deteriorating your body by doing more than that. But I really also work in the vertical feet into the mileage equation. 16 miles of flat is a much different story than 16 miles with 7,000 vertical feet, which really mirrors a lot more of the ultra events that I'll do. So I'll take your mileage basically on let's say week 7, and I'll say, hey, this is 16 miles out of the 60 I'm supposed to do, and I'll also equate that to, okay, my event would be 40,000 vertical feet, so I'll do the same percentage of that, so 16 divided by 80, and then I'll do, let's say it'd be maybe 7,000 vertical feet out of the 40,000 that would be in that event, if that
Are you
makes sense.
doing? Yeah, interesting. Are you doing? Do you like running laps on Snow King or running laps? I mean, it's pretty hard to do that efficiently, right? You got to find your track because there's a lot of time.
Yeah,
You don't want to be driving a half hour. You got to get on it. There's so much
well,
time, training time, right?
it's a lot of training time, and I'm very lucky to live in Jackson, where, don't tell anybody, but I can work my full entrepreneurship career, and still I'm outside 300 days a year, and the gym 2-3 days a week, and it's just due to the proximity. So I live right next to Snow King. I probably have 200 Snow King summits last year,
Right.
if not more. So a lot of
It's
Snow
a pretty
Kings.
incredible training tool, Snow King, right there at the vertical gain.
Yep, 1,500 vertical feet, 0.6 miles straight up. So for somebody like me, I'll go do 4 Snow Kings, but it doesn't always cut it. When you get into these events, whether it's mountaineering or it's these ultra marathons, they're very intense, and it's a significantly different beast to be 50 miles into a race where every single step is exponentially harder, and really being able to go out into the Teton range and get up into these places where you're uncomfortable. You don't have a perfect track. The trail is not perfect. That's where I really am able to hone in my training to, get good at when things get really hard, because I could lap Snow Kings all day and have my girlfriend bring me sandwiches and cookies at the bottom, but that's just not what it's really like. So I try to mix it up between getting the fitness in, but also getting the mental preparation side in, because in the mountains, it's tough.
Got it. Yeah. You've done but 3 or 4 of these races now. Have you found that your mental fitness for those is better as you get more exposure to that? Or is everyone just a fucking struggle at a certain point? Everyone is its own beast.
Well, maybe if I just stayed at the same level and did the same race, they get easier. So, for example, my first one that I completed was the Wyoming 100. Most of it was on horse trail. It was brutal. It took me about 34 hours. I limped into the finish, completely limped. A year later, I ran a similar profile vertical foot called the I'm Tough 100. They call it a PhD ultra race. It's still tough, but I was able to run through that thing, and it was kind of like a little walk in the park. It was still tough. 3 a.m., 70, 80 miles in. You're trudging. There's a moment that, everybody wants to quit. It's still brutal, but it became a lot easier. But I think as I progressed, I got into the 200 mile in August of last year. Man, that's 3 nights through. There are so many points where you're totally done. You want to quit. You can barely even move forward. So the mental aspect does not particularly get easier. It's a punch in the mouth every time.
How was that 200-mile race? Was that self-supported, or was it like, you'd come in, you have a tent to sleep in, and then how did that work?
Yeah, so it's about 20 miles to each aid station. So it's not self-supported. You go about 20 miles, you have an aid station. There's a little cot you can sleep in. So it's much different than a self-supported race. Like a lot of the ski adventures I do, they're completely self-supported. So it's exceptionally more difficult to go out and do those, because you're carrying the food. You have to be extra lightweight versus, 20 miles could be a long way when you're in the heat of it. But in 5-6 hours, you can be, at a little tent with a cot. You can sleep for an hour. You get a grilled cheese. It's much more plush.
Worst injury? I know you broke your back. Tell me about that. You're pretty young when you broke your back, right?
Yeah, I have a laundry list of injuries at a young age. I broke my back at 21 years old. That was the last major injury I've had. I'm now 29 years old. I broke my back. I was at a K2 ski shoot in Silverton, Colorado. It snowed a lot. It was great conditions. I was with a handful of some of the best athletes: McKenna Peterson, Pep Fugis, Amy, it's based on her last name, but some of these longtime K2 athletes, and we were having a great time and going off and jumping off these really big cliffs, and the snow was great, and I decided to make this jump to do a double backflip, and the snow had hardened up by then, and I was I built the jump out, but I didn't manicure it enough. I didn't give it enough kick going up. And the day was sunny with these clouds intermittently going in and out of the sun. And when you're doing a double backflip, you need to be able to see the ground to understand where you are. And so I drop into this thing. It was a jump off of a cordis. It was about a 100-foot jump all in all once I landed. And so I go and do the first backflip, and then the sun disappeared into a cloud, and I lost track of where I was. And all I saw was white. And so I ended up just kind of tucking forward, and I landed on my chest and did a scorpion backwards and broke T2 through 7 of my vertebrae, compression fractures. Completely knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't even speak, but I didn't know that I'd broken my back. That was the most painful injury I have ever had. It was brutally painful for 2 or 3 weeks.
Any knee injuries?
Yeah, so let's go through the laundry list. I tore my ACL the year prior and meniscus. I was able to come back within 6 or 7 months and ski again and feel pretty much totally fine. They took out my hamstring to replace the ACL. So my hamstring is now forever smaller, but I was able to come back from that pretty quickly. That one was not particularly as challenging for me. I broke my right collarbone a couple years prior to that. I broke my left collarbone a couple years prior to that. I smashed in my bottom row of teeth, and I've broken a knee. So I've done both knees, both collarbones, and then my back and my teeth.
Would you hit your knees with your teeth?
Yeah. So about one of the first big lines I'd ever skied is called Breakneck, right out of the side country of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I had seen all of these ski lines in the TGR films growing up. And so I knew where they were. They were right there. And so at about 15, I was confident enough and dumb enough to go out and do one of these lines. And it's this double drop. It's about a 15-foot drop down to this second, maybe 30-foot drop. And I did it in hard pack conditions. And so I do the one drop, ski down, do the second drop, and land it and smash my knee into my face and take all my teeth backwards and just start spewing blood out everywhere. So I learned pretty quickly, you want to be smart about 30-foot cliffs you hit.
I see. Is there any doubt in your mind that the Wyoming Range is the toughest mountain range in all of the world?
I have no doubt in my mind that's the toughest mountain range in the world, Rob.
Sam, just for you listeners, Sam and I went hunting there, and he was telling me about his 100-mile through there. No real trails, lots of deadfall. Great for elk hunting, though. Worst experience ultra running? I know you did that first race. You had some knee issues. Tell me about that. Or was it your knee or shins? What was it?
It was my knee. It was a pretty bad experience. I was just ill prepared mentally was the biggest thing. And when you get in an ultra race, everything's going to get messed up. Like that's why this is such a great equalizer. I am not a great runner, and I do well in these ultra races because it's more about gritting it out, going uphill and downhill. You'll kill me on the flat. So I get into this first ultra race, and I'm not mentally prepared. It was August in Wyoming, and it was snowing, and it's cold. We start at noon, and I probably get 6 or 7 miles in. We're running through the mud, and my knee catches, and I can just feel it catching on every step. About mile 7 in, and so I keep running. Maybe till about mile 30, and it gets dark and it's freezing cold. I eat a hamburger and some ramen, and I immediately feel stuffed and full and tired. And the next aid station's about 10 miles away. For ultra runners, 10 miles doesn't sound far, but when you're hurting, 10 miles is a long way. So I go out into the night completely alone. I have no crew out there. And it punched me in the mouth, Rob, and I backed out with the tail in between my legs. I got to the aid station at 2 a.m. and quit. I was limping. I wasn't doing so good. But now that I know, that's just part of it. You just limp your way all the way through. And so I got my butt kicked on that first ultra race. But
I was going to ask you for a time you quit in the mountains. Is that the one? Or do you have another time where you kind of got up there and just like mountain beat you?
I think the mountain
you could have kept going, you know what I mean? But you just it beat me today.
That was the biggest, I think, one where I felt shame, where I could have kept going and I quit. I got punched in the mouth, and I was 2 a.m. and I couldn't do it, and I just quit. I think I could have physically finished the race. And so the mountains just beat me, and I got a real taste of, how hard something like that is. And I just had the tail in between my legs. The other aspect of that with the quitting and shame is I kind of distanced myself from shame and quitting in the mountains because, again, the danger is that if you mess up in the mountains, you die. And it's really bad. So I really have a conservative approach to it. because I'm out there every day. The likelihood that something goes wrong is high because you're just out there so frequently that I don't mind, quitting. But when I don't leave it all on the table, I'm really hard on myself. But I try to distance myself from being, okay, I'm fired up, I want to go out and crush in these mountains, but realizing that the end result, if I push too hard, is I might die. And I've distanced myself a lot from shame. But, I don't want to leave some in the tank when I'm clearly fine to keep going.
Have you been pursued any ultra sponsors?
I have not pursued any ultra sponsors. Stio
Still knows you're doing it.
Stio knows I'm doing it. They're excited to help. I definitely think I could. Again, I think I'm starting to learn. I want to get really narrow in what I'm doing. I'm great at going uphill and downhill in these big races and doing these races that we get a little equalizer by being bad weather, by being high elevation, have an exceptional amount of vertical feet, maybe have some orienteering. Those are the races that I want to get really specific in. And I think I could find a sponsor, but I really just enjoyed the ease of paying the entry fee, doing the training, and then doing the event. And that's it.
So you're not pursuing that then. I mean, I haven't followed it that close, but how old are you now, Sam?
29.
Seems like mid-30s is when it all comes together for ultra runners, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the folks that I run with are later 30s, early 40s, some folks in their 50s and 60s, not just doing these races, but they're faster than me.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible running 200 miles. So yeah, I definitely feel like I'm just coming into my own with this. And I've gotten my butt kicked on the technical aspect of things. Running 200 miles, there's a lot of small logistics that go into it that I'm still learning. And so as
Give me
the
an
fitness
example.
comes, yeah. So to get really specific, I had run a couple 100-mile races before, and you get exceptionally chafed in your butt, especially more muscular guys and gals that maybe have a bigger butt. It's rubbing on your cheeks, and your cheeks will turn to, it looks like hamburger meat, and you can't walk another step when it feels like that. I can run 80 miles and know I have 20 miles to finish, and I can just tough it out. So I get into the 200, I don't even think about putting on the they call it squirrel nut butter, which is anti-chafe cream that you need to put on your butt, because your butt will rub together, and the same with other places on your body, but especially your butt. And so I got 110 miles into this race and I couldn't walk. So we got to the flat sections. I could not run, Rob. I walked 10, 15 miles to get into the mountains to eventually where we were going uphill, and it was comfortable enough for me to go. And so, that one little thing probably cost me 8 hours in this race. And I think I finished in 68 hours. So I could have potentially finished in 60. So it was a huge little technical thing that I learned really fast. You can't tough out 100 miles of that. Nope.
I don't have that long distance, but my knees, I'd like to do that, but my knees are gone for sure now.
Yeah, that's a long way. That's too bad to hear.
Okay, Avant Delivery. What the hell is Avant Delivery?
Yeah,
That's
so
your company.
Avant Delivery is my company. Avant is French for before, means before delivery. And this is where my fire really went, and why I decided to retire. I honestly felt like I was at the top of my ski game right before I retired. I had just competed in Kings and Queens of Corbett's. I did a double backflip in there. I had been filming. I had really been getting the top of my athletic game. And we get into this next winter. I had started my company right out of COVID, just feeling like I needed
Now,
to
hold a
give.
second. You got a degree in business from Montana State.
Yes,
And
accounting.
so, it was accounting.
Accounting.
But you just wanted to be a business person. You just like to be a business person, right? You just need to find the business you want, but you weren't. Okay, go ahead.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I wasn't. I got a degree in Montana State. I was skiing professionally. I lived in Jackson and commuted every once in a while, but I loved numbers. I loved learning about business, and learning the accounting side really helped me make the fundamentals of business really easy for me, because I understand financially how it works. Able to make cash flow appropriately. But I'm definitely an entrepreneur, fits better with my risk profile. I enjoy taking risks. I enjoy being uncomfortable, not having structure. So it really helped me form into an entrepreneur by being able to have the fundamentals of learning the language of business, is what accounting really is. And so I got the degree in Montana State, Montana State University, and then went back to Jackson, skied professionally for 4 more years. And once COVID hit, I basically decided, hey, I kind of need something else in my life. I kind of want to give back to skiing. Is a very selfish sport. I don't particularly find anything wrong with that, but I just felt like, hey, it's time for me to kind of give back a little bit, because I get to go jump out of helicopters for the past 8 years and ski around, and it's a good time, but there's a lot of problems facing this world. What can I do? And I really ended up landing on, we just throw out so much unnecessary items, and I really landed on things like takeout containers and packaging that we as consumers use. And I figured, why don't we just make something thicker and a more durable packaging, and I can create a company that comes in, picks it up from your house when you're done with it, we wash it and put it back in the system. So that's where Avant Delivery came from, before delivery, as in we think about what your packaging looks like and where it goes at the end of its life before it's delivered to your door. So that was the initial concept I started with. And over the years, I was able to test that out in Jackson, from the coffee cups to the containers that you got your lettuce greens in, to coffee bean containers, to takeout containers from the restaurant. I tested all of those out, made money different ways, but ended up landing on this model where it's a membership program. Consumers pay $15 to become an Avant member, and then we actually make meals for customers. We make them once a week, and then we sell them to you in these reusable containers. We drop them off at your house, and then when we drop off your new meals, we take your old containers, we wash it, and we put it back in the system. And that's what I landed with, and have now here live in Salt Lake.
Yeah, but in Jackson and Salt Lake?
No, just in Salt Lake.
Just in
Unfortunately,
Salt Lake.
Jackson was just too small, and financially, I spent all my money there. I learned a lot. We can talk about mistakes, but I learned a lot of mistakes there that allowed me to cut my teeth, though, and come to Salt Lake and move fast. So Salt Lake's been much easier because it's a bigger market, and we're an impact company. We're going after taking as much single-use plastic out of the landfill and just cycling it through the circle instead. So it's about volume more so than, maybe spending $10,000 with one customer in Jackson, Wyoming.
I've always thought, I've been a businessman, I'm my own business for, 30 years now, more. And it's fun. Scary, but it's fun.
It's fun. Rob, you gave me one of the best pieces of advice in business. You said, don't take money from that guy. I had been talking about bringing an investor on. You said, just go get a credit card and swipe that credit card, and then you're forced to be in it, and you just have to find your way through. And it was probably, it's not advice for everybody, but if you're a true entrepreneur, it just puts your skin in the game. It was the best advice I ever got. It worked well for me. So thank you.
What best? Okay, tell me your biggest business mistake. If you could go back to COVID and do it again, what would you do differently?
Yeah. Well, it's almost maddening because I make the same mistake in my ski career as I do my entrepreneur career. It's spending resources, which can be time or money, on things that don't matter. And so very specifically, I created something in Jackson where people thought there was a lot of value to it. They wanted these meals in reusable containers delivered to their house. And I brought on 3 employees, paid them full salaries to work on things that had nothing to do with what the actual business was. And the same thing as I did in skiing, trying to work with a sunscreen brand or a protein brand, that I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on things that just absolutely did not matter to me or the customers. And it was a huge mistake that knocked me back probably 2 years, to be fully honest, to be able to recuperate the money. And then once I had the money, to go out and, spend it on getting good customers and providing them the best product possible. But it was a huge mistake that I learned.
Let's go into the details now. You're running it remotely from Jackson, or how often are you in Salt Lake? Or you live in Jackson and go to Salt Lake and go to Jackson to ski?
Yep. So I live in Jackson full time. I have the business in Salt Lake City. I've hired one fantastic chef who makes all of the meals, and then I run it remotely. We have a gentleman that goes and delivers all the meals and washes the containers and puts them back into the system. And then my chef cooks the meals. What I really do, I run the entrepreneur part where I figure out all the challenges. I bring all the customers in. I do the marketing. I build out the website and the IT. I do all the finance aspect of it. I do all the compliance. And luckily nowadays, it really bodes well for my athletic career and living where I want to live. Is I can live in Jackson and I can come down to Salt Lake when we're having periods of growth, which all happen to come at once. And I can come live in Salt Lake, for 3 weeks and hire up the people that I need to hire, move into the new location, put in a hood vent to go, the classic entrepreneur things, but I don't necessarily need to be there on a day-to-day basis when I have hired smart, where I hire the people that are specifically only doing the really important business functions and are better at it than I am. Unlike the chef, great example, that they run it and they don't need me to be around to go and get them a small thing or two.
So you've got a commercial kitchen, something like that, right? And so you run a commercial kitchen every day. Then that's part of it.
Yep.
So interesting.
Exactly.
And then you're doing home deliveries for people. I guess you're delivering the meals.
Yep. Exactly.
What's your typical customer? Is there a profile? Is it like just give me, is there a profile for your typical customer?
Very much so. Our ideal customer and our best customers are moms in their 40s. They almost all live in south of Salt Lake. A lot of them have families. A lot of them are working professionals that frankly have a disposable income, but are a little bit more eco-conscious is the word that I like to use. These are not eco-warriors. They're not the classic person standing in front of a tree trying to stop the bulldozer from taking it down, but they know that they want to take care of the world and throw less away. I think that's a pretty common goal for people that are conservative or liberal. It's a pretty simple thing. People don't like throwing stuff away. So people that are a little bit more educated, but they're generally moms in their 40s and they live in these kind of suburban areas where there's also not an abundance of great food. We're able to bring in healthy food, but it's also it's a little bit fancier than you would get from a meal prep kit at HelloFresh, but it's also locally made. So it's just kind of one up from that in terms of value.
Do you, I imagine you get involved in what the menu selection is and the meal? Is that a frustrating element to it, or is it kind of fun to get into details like that? Are you a foodie yourself? I'm not a foodie, but I'm not. Are you?
Yeah, so I have another business. It's a Chinese and Taiwanese restaurant here in Salt Lake, and that business is doing very well. So I'm very detailed in the food. I have a partner that runs it. It's his business. Again, I run the marketing, the finance, the compliance. But I worked in restaurants my whole life growing up to complement my ski career. It was fantastic. I could bartend in the summer and ski all winter. And when I went to New Zealand, I could just say, hey, I'm not working right now. So I'm very deep in the details of what food is like and, what people are like and how do we get on the cutting edge of food and making the product really awesome. So yeah, I'm deep in the details of that.
What's your most popular meal for Avant?
It's a power bowl. So we basically think like you got your protein, your veggies, and some sort of, whether it could be like rice or it could be like a mix of salsa corn. Like we have a chicken fajita bowl that's exceptionally popular. We do a honey sriracha salmon bowl and things like that are healthy, but they have like a little honey sriracha salmon sauce on top to kind of just make it flow and taste better, that people can just pull out of the fridge, put in the microwave and eat. It's our best seller by a long shot.
Is there any question about your skiing career that I didn't ask but should have?
Well, I guess talk about the risk factor and how that plays in. Most of the people that I looked up to in my ski career are dead, like to be fully frank. So could definitely talk a little bit about that.
Well, you had talked about
That's
exposure.
My life.
And I remember there was I've written about this before, but there's a book called On Killing, I think, for tactical guys. But the author, it's a famous book in the tactical world, and he describes that when soldiers get to a combat zone at first, they think they're going to die, and then they're there for a little bit, and they think they're invincible because they haven't died, and then after there for a little bit while, they understand that there's really no rhyme or reason to it. But the longer you're in theater, the more exposure you have, the longer chances you have to die. So typical ski mountaineering trip, that's why speed is safety. You're less exposed, right? But there's a case, really, two high-end climbers who trained a mountain athlete, and one of them was guiding. I forget where it was. But they had just, it was like a camp. They'd set up, and at night, avalanche came down and almost got him. And,
Yeah.
The dude's wife was freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's just exposure. There's nothing they could have done
There's no
different. Who
rhyme or
knows?
reason.
Right. So that's the problem with I think 13 people died last 2 weeks in France from in the Alps from avalanches. Right. And so there's plenty of great. Really, you had spoken a little bit earlier about the airbag giving you too much confidence. And this has been a long time, but there's some research that shows that people with AVI 2 certifications die more from avalanches than guys with AVI 1. So there's some interesting heuristics there. Yeah, go into that risk. I mean, tell me, Sam,
Yeah.
wouldn't it just be fucking stupid to die in avalanche
Yeah.
skiing
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
Tetons?
Yeah, it would be fucking stupid. And at the same time, I think anybody that skis in the Tetons that does not acknowledge that that may happen is also, I think you're lying to yourself. Like, you're going to be out there enough. The possibility that you're going to die, you have to accept that possibility. You do not want to frivolously go out there thinking I could just die with no rhyme or reason. But if you think you're operating out there in these places where one slip and you're going to die, that's not a very real risk. And I think that's the general sentiment is people, back to heuristics, they rationalize a lot of these things. But the bottom line is when you're operating hundreds, if not thousands of days of your life in a place where one mistake and you're going to die, I think you just have to accept that fact that that's part of the game, but it's balanced out with this other side of, okay, well now, I'm an entrepreneur. I have 30 employees. I have a girlfriend at home. I have a lot of responsibilities if I die. It would be very bad news. It would be very stupid. And especially if I make a stupid mistake. So I think there's a lot that goes into that. Like, how do I avoid stupid mistakes? How do I keep that in the front of my mind of like, the goal is to not die here. I'm okay with quitting. That's why I talked about pushing shame a little bit away, because I know that it's a very real possibility that I could die out in the mountains because I spend a lot of time there. And especially as this progresses naturally as a ski mountaineer, what do? You go and ski more difficult lines where the likelihood of dying is even higher because they're more technical. And that's how you advance. You learn how to get through those situations. So it's kind of a dangerous progression line. And a lot of what scared me about free skiing too, as jumping off of 100-foot cliffs, is where's the progression go? What do I do when all of my heroes, the people that I looked up to, start dying, before they're 50? Where do you go with that? It's an open-ended question. It's tough to answer exactly, but as I go into looking at expeditions in the Himalayas and I get more skills on being able to do expeditions, you just go into further and further places where it becomes even more likely. And I think it comes a lot around to like, how do I mitigate that? Training's a big one. Like I've been very serious about my training since, I met you 13 years ago. And that's a huge part of it is that can help me, with my safety, but also learning skill sets on, first aid and all that, how to better navigate the mountains. But the better I navigate the mountains, the more dangerous of a situation I can put myself in because my skill set's higher. So I really philosophically look at it like, I don't want to die out there. Like that's the last thing I want to do. So I try to make every choice to not die out there. But at the same time, I'm very comfortable out in these dangerous situations. So it's a tough one.
Let's talk about some stupid mistakes you've made and got away with it.
Yes. So let's go to last year.
So this isn't like years ago. This is last year, and you
Oh,
just gave me this lecture how you don't want to die in a mountain.
yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So even being safe, it's just the edge for error is so low, and so in January I go out with one of my good partners. He is the short line guy for Teton Search and Rescue. He is very, very knowledgeable. We go out to ski Apocalypse Couloir. It had finally snowed. It had been a long 2 months of
You skied
lack
this a
of snow last
bazillion
year.
times, right?
Yep, I've skied Apocalypse Couloir six, 7 times. Most of the time it's very easy ski. And that day it was not easy. We go in. He didn't bring his crampons and ice axe. We have 2 ropes to even get into the thing. So we have ropes and everything, and we get in. It's very not exposed to get in. You get in, you rappel in, you have no exposure, you rappel in, and then you get to the line, and it's this steep, like 45, 50 degree couloir. And it had just snowed a lot on top of basically like sheet ice almost. And so what we do to mitigate the risk a lot of the times in these situations is he puts me on a rope and I go and ski cut it, because if it avalanches, it's not gonna take me. He's gonna hold me there. So that's how we mitigate the risk. He puts me on and I cut it and I say, okay, I think it's fine. And I take off the rope, and I take another turn in the couloir, and the whole sides come in on me. And I have to ski out of this thing full speed, and it takes the back of my skis and starts pushing me down, and I have to ski out of it. And so it's not technically like an avalanche, but it's slough that would kill you, right? And that's the danger in these situations. That's the dragon that you're dealing with this type of avalanche. And so I ski out of it really fast to my safe zone. But if I had gotten taken down with that, it would have killed me, no doubt about it. And it was a good lesson of like, when I'm on that ski belay, I need to go and cut the whole thing, especially when it's being sensitive. I need to take that a little bit further and get out of the danger zone before I get out of that ski belay. So that was only a year ago. That was a stupid mistake that, it's just one turn that could have killed me, even though we're being safe for the other 98%.
There's this evolution in hunting. We probably talked about this when you're hunting, but maybe not. It's worth repeating here. I don't see the same thing in ski mountaineering, but the evolution is you start out, you don't think you're going to shoot anything, it's impossible, especially if you're self-taught like you and me, right? And then you get a little bit of success and you kill anything you can, and then you get a little selective, so you wait for bigger animals or something, and then after a while you realize that it's okay to go out and not really get anything, because just being out there and that's the interesting thing about hunting, as you know, is you go slow.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go slow, and it slows you down, and you pay more attention, and it's makes hiking a lot more interesting, right? But I don't see that so much in alpinism or ski mountaineering, because, like you said, you get these new skills. It's like doing all of a sudden skiing the Jackson Hole side country, even though it's heavy danger. It's fun skiing there. It's not enough.
Not enough, no. And it's that progression. Like, where am I going to go with that progression when you know where it leads? Not everybody, but when most of the heroes you looked up to that do this type of thing die, where does it lead? And so it can lead into maybe you.
Because right, Seth Morrison died, right? Did he die?
Oh no,
No,
Seth
it
Morrison's
was
still alive.
Sean did. Sean
Yep,
McConkey, right?
Shane McConkey died,
Johnny,
but like
right.
a couple of years ago, Hillary Nelson died, JP Auclair died, and it's really in these Andreas Franzen, these big name mountaineers that were going out and pushing the limit. My friend Michael Gardner just died pushing up a limit up in the Himalayas a couple months ago. That's just the game when you're pushing
Mike
these
Gardner?
things. Yep. Son of the XM guide that
Really? Oh my
died.
God.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
really
So
sad for his mom.
it's a dark,
Wow.
yep. It's a dark, this is a dark sport. It is a very tough sport. And so part of to what you're saying about hunting and just kind of understanding, like, it's a lifetime sport for me for this. And there's times when it's just like business. It all comes at once. Like, I can go and hit all 10 of these lines I was searching to ski. You do them at once. But if they're not there, they're not there. And the same goes with hunting. You have two bull elk bugling at you at once, but it's been quiet for 29 days otherwise. And I think a lot of these lessons I'm getting across the spectrum, from my free ski career to my mountaineering career to my ultra career to my entrepreneurship career, they're very, very similar, and they're repeating themselves. Man, it's up to me to listen, but they come at once, right? And I have to be ready when it's good, but I have to be patient when it's not. And I still have to put in the work. In a mountaineering sense, I need to learn and build the anchor up. But like, I can't go and try to ski a line that's not ready and build an anchor just because I learned it. Like, it might be 3 years before I ski this line, but when the time is right, I want to be ready and prepared for when I can. So that's kind of how I'm looking at taking it, versus being like, I need to go and knock off all of these things on my list because my sponsorship might end if I don't.
When you take a look back at the incident you just described there in Apocalypse, was that a mistake of arrogance or a mistake of ignorance?
I mean, probably there's definitely arrogance in it, because the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if I thought I was being safe by because I was safe for the first 20 feet of the line. It only takes the next 10 feet to kill you, right? And so it's probably a little bit of arrogance, more so. I know exactly what can happen if I get caught in that, but it's probably arrogance of like, I have the tools, I'm doing the tools right. And I think this is why these professionals end up dying at higher rates, because their competence is so high that, but the you can get yourself into that situation. I got myself there, that maybe if somebody wasn't as skilled, they couldn't have gotten themselves past that ski belay. And then the arrogance is like, okay, I'm fine now because I am competent enough to get here. But the next step, it wasn't fine. And then even that day, we had more mistakes, and they pile on each other. We got around the bend in Apocalypse, and it turns out that the snow had been melting and turned the blue ice section. You have to rappel another blue ice section another 100 meters past where the rappel finished. And my partner did not have crampons and ice axe. So it's like arrogance here because we're so skilled, and we both grew up in Jackson, and we're both good enough at getting into this situation that when something pops up that's not normal, that's abnormal, we weren't prepared for it. And that's the ignorance, is like, okay, now when I bring my ski kit, I bring an extra ice screw, because that would have completely solved the issue. I always, if I'm bringing a rope, I'm bringing my ice axe and my crampons every single time. And I need to bring this extra gear to overcome the arrogance, or I need to ski belay a little bit longer than I think, because if I get slid in that spot on that day, a slide was very likely, I could die. So arrogance, short answer.
I know one of the contest suggestions you talked about was the light gear, leaving gear behind versus safety. And I remember doing a course with Exum, and one of the guys teaching the course had some really light ice axe. Like the thing was a toy, it was worthless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just thinking to myself, man, it's one thing to be, but you got to balance that against, I remember going with Steve Koch one time and going through my pack and ripping all the shit off that he said I didn't need.
Yeah.
So it's there's interesting elements to it. The difference, of course, between maybe a military situation and what you're doing is there's kind of a bigger purpose to the military stuff, right?
Yep. It's much less. I mean, that's the spirit of alpinism and mountaineering, at least how I understand it, is that you're going out with, you may have intention to ski a line, but the force of the mountain's so much bigger than you, and that you have to work around it, and to be able to go with as little material as possible. That's in the elitist alpinism sense. That is the spirit, to be able to go and conquer. It's a very European vibe of mountaineering, but conquer these mountains with as little as possible. And that's, where elite alpinism looks, is like, I ran up Mount Blanc, right, in 11 hours and in my shorts and with little crampons. That's like the spirit of alpinism. And it's very freeing to be able to travel through these mountains without much gear. And that's the heart of where people really love this. Is it's just so simple, and you're just able to go move fluidly through these mountains without having 100 layers in a sleeping bag and all of this extra stuff in a picnic. It's just very simple and without too much intention. You kind of have to go with the flow, whereas the heart of that. But at the same time, it comes with a lot of danger for those of us that like to move fast without a lot of gear, because you can get into situations where you don't have the gear and you could die. Or you get stuck overnight, might not die, but you're going to have a sad night.
Cold, shivering.
Yeah.
Interesting. That idea, I understood that fast and light gear, but I didn't know there was this, and I understood the idea of not assaulting a mountain in an industrial way and cleaning your stuff up. But I didn't know there was this badge of elitism to doing it.
Very much so.
There's certainly some judgmental, but it wasn't like, if I take even less gear, I'm even more badass.
Yeah, that's
it's
exactly
like it has nothing to do with being able to move a little more free. It has to do to show people that I took less shit. Is that right?
I took less shit, but like I moved up it more freely. That is it. It's one and the same in my eyes. That you took less shit. I don't need as much because I'm more competent with less gear, but I also can move freer and faster. And especially as the fitness level is so high these days. So I know you talked about Michelino, his Grand Teton record, but there are people like him. He's one of my best partners. So happy to get into that. I was up there on that day he broke the record.
You didn't cut the thing, did you?
No. I was up there on the Owen Spalding, the exposure section, telling people to get out of the way. I listened to your podcast the other day about it, and I've never seen anybody run over exposure like that. But
He
you
ran
have
over
people
it?
like
Oh my God.
he didn't climb over it, Rob. So I'm very, I'll climb that without a rope all day. He sprinted over the part where you're belly crawling. He's on his foot,
Oh my God.
and I'm just sitting there with my jaw dropped. I've seen a lot, and I was blown away by it. And so he is a great example, though, of these people that are at such a high level of fitness, like exceptionally high, that can go up and do these previously really tough mountaineering routes like it's a day in the.
Are you doing any long ultra events that aren't a race?
Yeah, especially skiing. Like I'll go out and do we did the Teton Crest Trail in the winter, doing Gannett in the winter in a single push. We're going to go do the high route on the winds and a single push in the winter. So yeah, not on foot, but yeah, on skis. So yes, that are not ultra races. And I'll go run. Like we ran up the Mount Blanc. That's not necessarily an ultra race, but we did that from the base, from base to summit to base, and
Yeah, I
big
know
long one.
you mentioned Mont Blanc. I know you did trip up into Denali. You mentioned Himalaya. Do you really want to go to the Himalaya?
Oh yeah,
Man, you
yeah,
got to work in the Wyoming range. That's the toughest range out there, I'm telling you.
yeah. I get my butt kicked there every time I go, Rob.
So you wrote about checking. I don't go to Instagram very much. I really don't understand it, honestly. I'm 50, almost 57. But you had this one post in there, a mix of people in your life that have one or three traits. This is a while ago. You said it. I like the middle one, though. A truth teller that never makes you feel the end result is impossible. Challenging others does not lead to a high volume of friends. We tell people what they want to hear. That's why truth tellers never say a word impossible. Never Truth tellers that never say the word impossible are key. Not only a truth teller, right, but they never say it's impossible. They're really simply messy and difficult. We often suck at executing our own plans. You're talking about somebody. Who is that person?
It's funny. It's actually you. It's funny they picked it up. You and another mentor of mine. His name's Trevor Allen. He was a business mentor and one of my investors. But basically, the heart of what I was saying there is that you have a lot of nice people in your life. You have a lot of people that want to make you feel comfortable. There are some folks that just want to do things that are really hard and cost a lot. And you kind of need people to tell you the truth. And there's very few of those people in the world. And you were one of those people for me growing up at a young age to just, maybe it wasn't always right, but he definitely shot it how it is and allowed me to go, chase the right direction. So I've had a fair amount of mentors, very few in the ski world, but a lot in the business and life world that have just shot me straight and said, in a harsh way, like this is really what you need to do, and you're just not good enough at it. is the simple answer, and you need to go get better at it. And I think that a lot of people don't like that, and it takes basically, it's hard to make friends when you're being as harsh like that, but it's really important. The few people that you do find become a lot more important to you because you know that they're going to kind of help you get you where you want to go. And so that was really a post about me making this transition in my life from being a professional skier to being an entrepreneur. I just wasn't good enough yet, and there were certain people telling me the truth, and then there were people flattering me and not telling me the truth. Those flattering people, I don't ever talk to. They're not part of my life really, and you definitely lose some friends and companions that way.
Are you one of these truth tellers to others?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I've probably gotten a little bit more. I've become a lot more sharp over the past 2 or 3 years, just by necessity, by being very busy, by being put in very hard situations. That I probably shoot people the truth. I think I'm a little softer than other folks.
Than me?
That's a skill set I'm trying. Yeah, exactly. I'd say you and that other mentor, Trevor, are definitely shoot it straighter, faster, but it doesn't always land as well because they're like truth spears. They kind of stab into people even though they're very true. But yeah, that's something I'm working on is just being very direct with people.
Any questions for me?
What are you doing with all of these athletes here, Rob? With these tactical athletes and myself and these podcasts, what are you trying to accomplish and tell your subscribers and followers by working with us? Where are you taking this?
Not sure yet. Not the big plan. Part of, like I said, is being a entrepreneur is fun, and it's kind of fun to do this and work with individuals. I do miss working with people. I don't do that as much anymore. But I am, prior to becoming a strength conditioning coach, I was a journalist and I was a good journalist. And I do like good content, and you don't see a lot of that. And I like the idea of being able to do it. And then I find that the process of working with people to bring that out of them, because it's there, for the people listening to get to it, is kind of fun. So I think we have this opportunity to create a kind of a unique space in these worlds where there's some good content in the military side. We're actually known for some of our military specific writing. There isn't very much at all. I guess there's a little bit on the mountain sports side, fire rescue and first responders, none. There's no real good journalism there at all. And then in strength conditioning, most of it's crap. So, it really is. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested to do that and just kind of see where it goes. And then see, it's a certain type of person I think will be attracted to that. And honestly, athletes who, once they get in, like being challenged, or I'm going to challenge them, yourself included. Because
Yep.
I'm gonna make you. Isn't how
Yep.
much you can, how fast you can run, but how sharp you can think, right? So it's a
Very much.
different type of stuff. Yeah. So I'm
Yep.
not sure yet. When it comes to, I remember I told you when we talked about that, the minimum viable product, right? You want to start quick, and, we want to got to get reps in and learn and then iterate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where it's at. And it's interesting how you've iterated, learned your own business, and now you found something that works, right? You get some
Yep.
traction. Remember those words?
Yep.
Iterate,
Exactly.
traction. So yeah. I think what is a little bit different from this is, and in all my business, I've never tried to find the market. I've always created the product that I wanted. And because I wasn't going to be a strength coach and coach athletes or coach programming that was
Crap.
popular. I wanted to do stuff that I thought was good, and I knew that the market for that would be smaller. Same with journalism, same with everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think there may not be a market for this. The type of content that we're going to produce. I'll still produce it. I think there is. Perhaps people aren't used to it. Maybe, who knows?
Yep. Well, that's what attracted me to this, Rob, was the I keep learning these lessons and getting narrow and specific on one subject. I found a lot of success doing that, and um, I was very attracted to being able to do something that I love and share something that I love and talk about it very, very specifically to, maybe it's a smaller group of people, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 1,000, about exactly the weight of the binding and the boot that I use, and get into that narrow field and create content around that, because I spend a lot of time thinking and working on it, so I can go out and achieve these really, really difficult things. So definitely excited to see how the other athletes contribute to that as well, and learn from them. So I that's what attracted me to it.
Yeah, I think some people. Yeah, I think the pros, they understand in all these different worlds what a difference skier can make, and if you're committed, then you understand that no one company makes all and you spend a lot of money finding the right
Yeah,
stuff, right?
much. Yeah, yeah,
I got one more question before we go into lightning
yeah.
round.
Please.
What is the deal in the ski world where you can't find a friggin' mentor? I mean, I've talked to female skiers about that before, and there was always just weird jealousy, right? No women coached
Mm-hmm.
other women; they always go with their boyfriend. I thought it was
Yeah.
different on the male side. It isn't, or you just no one wants to work with you.
Yeah, it might just be me. The female side of the jealousy is very tough. I've just seen
We
it
don't need to
throughout
go in
my
that.
career.
No, yeah, but I saw
But
that for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, for me, just couldn't find anybody that, wanted to spend the time with me and invest in me. And it might have just been me. I'm not projecting on them, but then a lot of them just became my companions that I would go ski with at times. But also, I would get very specific and want to do specific things, and it's hard to find partners too, especially as I challenge myself even more and more and more. But they're off busy doing their own thing and just weren't very interested.
Can you predict my next question?
Mm.
Well, who are you mentoring?
I have a 22-year-old kid just out of college, and him and I are like companions, but I definitely am the older mentor. So he's an unbelievable young man, and I have invested in him and he's invested in me, but I definitely am like I'm the older mentor in that scenario.
He's on the ski run world.
Yep. Yep. He's one of the athletes that could run the Grand Teton in under 3 hours, but he just needs some sharpening. He's trying to find his way, but
All that matters is if you can bench press more than him, Sam. Just
I
remember
know.
that.
I know. Wait till I tell you about my ultra idea. I'm gonna do 100-mile ultra race. It's gonna be my race, and at the end, you're gonna have to bench press 185 pounds, and every rep that you get is an hour off your time. So that way, I can finally win my first ultra marathon race because all these skinny guys
I see they
wouldn't
got
stand a
spoon
chance.
chests. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I guess so. One more question on the fitness side. You never got into mountain biking.
Oh no, I'm in mountain biking, but I probably mountain bike about 30 days a year. I get so intense in my seasonal training. So
For
when I'm
running.
running, I need to
Yeah.
run. When I'm skiing, I'm going to do an expedition in May. I do 60 to 80,000 vert months of skiing. So like, there's just not time to mountain bike 100 days a year.
I built
I have to
a
be specific, and I want to hunt too. So
yeah, I know.
you
James,
ruined September's.
I know. You're welcome. James was going to do this 100-mile race, mountain bike race there.
Yeah.
So it got
Yep.
canceled for COVID, but I built the plan for it. And
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Oh my God!" I had him doing laps up and down Snow King, and he says, "Oh, I still enjoyed. I got these young guys, just crush them." I think it's his mental
Sure.
fitness.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
All right, lightning round. What mountain resume accomplishment are you most proud of?
Skiing the northeast snowfields of Mount Owen. That is one hell of a mountaineer line.
How many times you done that?
Just once.
Just the once?
Yep.
You
Just
told
the
me about
once.
it.
Yep.
Which one are you least proud of that you've enlisted?
I skied the Middle Teton. I've skied it many times, the East Glacier route, but I almost died at the top section. It was exceptionally icy, and I had a rope available. Should have roped in, and I picked my way down it skiing, and it was the dumbest decision I've ever made, and I'm very ashamed of it.
Have you ever had to stop because you were so exposed and almost dry heave or your leg was going?
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, not dry heave or leg going. Honestly, my amygdala is like probably shaved down. Where when I'm in a situation where I think I'm gonna die, my brain goes, "Oh no, you're gonna die. You might die here. You better be careful." But like, my body's not freaking out.
Your body's not
It's
freaking out.
just fine, which is a concern, but a different subject.
Of all your mountain adventures you've gone on, which one's a favorite? I don't mean, favorite because it was hard or, difficult, but just fun. Which one is the most fun?
We skied the Teton Crest Trail in the winter a couple of years back. I think we were the third party to do it, and we have the fastest time. But it was just fun. We're skinning up in the middle of the night with no headlamps. There's bears waking up in April, walking around us, and then you're skiing down this backside of the Tetons where nobody's, people almost never ski. You're just out in the middle of nowhere, and it's this 40-mile traverse in the middle of winter. And that was so fun and unique. You don't do stuff like that very often. Full adventure.
Good for you. What's your favorite piece of gear?
Ooh, it's my Stio Sun hoodie. I wrote a little bit about this with MTI already. I wear this Stio Sun hoodie probably 200-300 days a year. I just wear it over everything. It protects me from the sun and my fair skin. I'm out in the elements all the time, and I can wear this in a shirt underneath, and I can wear that 90% of the time and be at a perfect temperature. That thing is awesome, and it's black, so I look good too while I'm out there.
Oh, you wear a black one, huh? Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those sun hoodies are pretty amazing. I haven't used that one, but this company named True Work makes them. I got some of those, and
Oh yeah.
they're cheaper. They're a lot cheaper than the friggin' gear companies. And the Sitka one, I love the Sitka one. That's the best
Yep.
one I've worn.
Yep, I have that one too.
Would you rather ski a new technical line or reattempt something that shut you down before?
Reattempt something that shut me down before.
What would it be?
I would like to go. I think I finished up all of my. I don't. Oh, Denali. No, I need to go do Denali. Yeah, I didn't get to the summit. I want to go do it from the base to the summit to the base in one push. That's what I want to go back
And
and do.
you're skiing down, right?
Yep. You skin up, ski down. It'll probably take me 16 to 18 hours if I'm fast. So that's one I have on my list to go back and to
Is
get.
that like a 3-week commitment to do that?
Yeah. So
How
I'm good at
expensive? It's
failing.
expensive, right?
Yep, it's very expensive. So these are huge goals. They're really tough, and I really love to go back, and I love to fail because that means I'm really challenging myself. And if I'm going back and back again, it means I'm about at the right area where I'm growing.
Most dangerous mountain mistake. Could have mentioned already, but
Yes.
does another one stand out? Which one is it? Apocalypse?
It's either Apocalypse or the middle. The middle was just total arrogance. I can
Arrogance. Yeah.
ski down everything. It was the stupidest decision I've ever made.
One place you'd never go back to, pulling them llamas out of our hunting trip, out of that hole we were in.
That was very bad. I don't think I'd ever bring a llama down something steep again, Rob. That
That
llama
one took
punched
you
me
out.
forward. Yeah, I did the full front flip with your bow, and I was like, oh, I better not have broken this bow.
Yeah, just for listeners or watchers, me and Sam did a hunting trip with some llamas, and it went about the way you'd think it would. But go okay. Anything else?
No, that's it. I appreciate you having me on, Rob, and looking forward to making
No,
some
we're not done. I
ultras to
mean, the one place
Rob.
you'd never go back to.
Oh,
Any
the
other
one place
place?
I'd never go back to. I every ultra race I'm in the middle of, I finish because I don't want to ever go back and do it again.
You never want to repeat an ultra race.
Not when you're mile 70 and it's some of the most miserable you could ever be.
I think we covered the most scared, worst job you can imagine.
Oh, I had to do some investment banking to get money again, and I had to sit on tax accountant calls for 2 or 3 hours at a time. Being a lawyer or a tax accountant sounds like the worst job I could ever have.
A dream job.
I'm living my dream job. I'm an entrepreneur and athlete. It's a Yvonne Chenard mold. I
Dream
could not be happier.
job other than your current job.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, helicopter pilot in Alaska.
Best career advice you've ever received.
Oof, best career advice I've ever received. It's not the credit card ones, but you once told me not to whore myself out for money. In a little bit more detail, basically, I was going out of my way to make a little bit, 500 extra bucks, and I was so far away from my purpose. And you said it like that, and that was honestly the best career advice I ever had, and it's kind of allowed me to focus in on like, all right, I'm going to do the things that matter, and I'll end up getting paid for it. The money will come. I just got to focus on it.
Worst career advice.
The worst career advice is from business. I've had business mentors basically tell me to stick with something that's just not working. Stick with something that's just not working. Like I've put all my energy into it and it's just not working. They're like, well, you just need to stick with it. And I am somebody that commits to things for decades. So commitment's not the issue, but you don't want to waste your life on something that's just clearly wrong.
Now we're done, Sam. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Okay. Take care.